everybody to another episode of the Audacity show. I'm sorry for the wait. Been on a hiatus lately, and I think it's time, divine time, to come back, drop another episode, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here. I dropped a few episodes at the beginning of this year, and I kind of let things play out, and things played out in alignment exactly as I said on the videos. The receipts are there. This isn't an I told you so moment. I just paid attention to the signs, and today we're going to talk a lot about synchronicities and the energy around lately, but most importantly, the theme of the show today is the 1111 portal. Today's November 11th, 2025, 9-year completion. New beginnings coming soon. But the 1111 portal is extremely important, and we're going to talk about why today. But before we get into that, we're gonna clear the air. We're going to start off with clearing any negative energy, and we're going to light some Palo Santo here and get ready for the show. This is the greatest time to be alive, I've been talking about it for a while now, and I want everybody to understand that this isn't any conspiracy theories. Everything I talk about is just being awake, more conscious. Everything is playing out as it should. These things been in the books. I'm always talking about books, and I'm not really just talking about like esotericism, occultism, nothing like that. I'm talking about in general history books. The Bible's a book. It's a science book that you should read as a scientific study rather than an emotional religious book. The Quran, the Hindu proverbs, the Torah, everything is in alignment, and all of these scriptures talk about the same thing, the same events that are occurring on earth, outside of earth, and it comes in cycles, and I think we should be aware of these cycles, and really pay attention to what's going on in the world around us, the world inside us, internally, and that's the most important thing that I really want to touch on. Every time we talk about being in alignment, it's important to kind of bring some context to that, right? Because being in alignment doesn't just mean being tuned into like astrology, astronomy, stuff like that, right? Or just reading books, right? Because people read books all the time. Whether it's like science thrillers and fantasies and things like that, right? When I talk about being in alignment, I'm talking about following what your inner self is telling you, your intuition, where it's guiding you. And that's what we're going to talk about today. 1111 is extremely important. Just think about it unconsciously. We've always been privy to the dates 1111. We see it on the time, and it's like 1111, make a wish, or we see the number on a license plate, or anywhere you see it, right? Intuitively, we've always gravitated to that number. And today we're going to talk about a little bit of why and the significance of that. This is all important stuff. I've talked about cosmic information before, and like numerology and astrology, and I try to put things all together in alignment. One of the things that I've realized is that growing up, I had a thing for learning. I loved learning. I actually learned that there's a word for that. Philomath is someone who just loves learning. So my path of being a philomath throughout my life actually allowed me to become a polymath And a polymath is when you are knowledgeable in a broad variety of topics and subjects, right? So I can relate to people who are talking about, just basic stuff like everyday living, relatability, experiences growing up, traumas and stuff like that. But I can also talk to you on a higher conscious level about the information I share on this platform. You know, when you know thyself, you know how to move, how to present yourself in a different manner. And, I can't stress it enough how important it is. Right now is the time to be in alignment. I've been saying it since the first week of 2025. And now we in, we got a month to go before 2026. And I promise you 2026 and beyond is going to be very, very different, very fast paced. A lot of changes are coming, but we're going to touch on that on some future episodes, right? Today we're just going to focus on the power of 1111 and the portal, The word portal is used symbolically when we talk about portal, right? It's a threshold where time, such as like a calendar date, right? And an inner state, the vibration, your frequency, your intuitiveness, those two collective fields meet. On November 11th, the calendar mirrors the number 1111, creating a symbolic alignment of time and date externally. And then intention and energy and intuitiveness are in alignment internally, right? So we always talk about, or I always mention, as above, so below, as so within, so without. So once you see the numbers 1111, whether on the clock, whether on the calendar, intuitively, you know that's a time for an alignment where your purpose, your energy, your intentions should be in alignment, just like those, two numbers on the clock or two numbers on the calendar. And I don't want to sit up here and like claim that a portal guarantees anything, right? I just want to emphasize the fact that alignment plus action is what creates power, the concept of alignment plus action is the most powerful thing you can do, right? So you have to, it's like when you're learning something, you become knowledgeable. Knowledge isn't power. Applying that knowledge is what creates the power, right? So obtaining the knowledge is the alignment piece, and then applying that knowledge in real life is the action. And that's what creates power. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, like I said, the key theme today is alignment, aligning with your identity, your daily habits, your intentions, your inner truth, your purpose, right? Manifestation. 1111, they always say 1111, make a wish. You know what that means? That's you're manifesting. You're using that energy of 1111 to manifest. And that's very important. We got to take that more serious. And like I said, it's just been an intuitive thing. You don't think about these things when you're younger. Why do people always say that, right? Make a wish, 1111. But as you grow older, you start to realize numbers are important. Symbols are important, right? So you got to use these things to your advantage and leverage what you've learned and apply it in real life, and you're going to see things change. You're going to see things happen for you rather than to you. Not everyone is conscious of this information. Not everyone is awake, unfortunately. But those who are familiar with the energy of this date and those people watching this episode are part of the chosen ones, part of those people who are awake or are in the awakening period, who have felt the shift and are ready for more information, more energy, more confirmation, more reassurance, more confidence to step into what they're meant to do in life. So, right now this is just 11/11, November 11th is, it's a time for release. It's a time for closure. It's a time for stepping outside your comfort zone. If there's a job that's just, you're at your current job and is frustrating you and you think it's not aligned with your purpose anymore, guess what? This is the time to step outside that comfort zone. Maybe, I'm not saying just up and quit your job, right? But start intuitively tapping into what resonates with you more. If your work is no longer in alignment with how you feel, move on. It's okay to move on. We put these limits on ourselves, and society has put them on us all our life. This isn't the time for that whatsoever. You need to step into your purpose, and true purpose comes from within. So that's the whole point of today's theme. Numerology. In numerology, 11 is a master number. It represents intuition, inner vision, spiritual activation, awakening, right? The number 11 is actually associated with your crown chakra, alignment. And right now is time to be in alignment to reach that enlightenment period, right? The crown chakra is all about enlightenment, conscious awakening. So, it's one of those numbers where it's a powerful number. You can't break down the number 11, right? It's like, again, just symbolically, metaphorically, it's like stepping outside the comfort zone. Everyone's used to numbers 1 through 10, 1 through 9 in numerology. Well, 11 is outside of that, right? There has been, I forget what book I read, that talks about the 11 dimensions. I think it's the modern theory, M theory in physics, where it talks about the 11 dimensions. Everyone focuses on, 2D, 3D, 4D, even 5D, right? But really, 11D is a real thing, and it allows us to expand our consciousness, our thinking, and think outside the box. Like if we're still stuck here on 3D, 4D, even 5D, right? Imagine what's on the other side of that, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11D. I mean, at that point, you are, a light being, right? You are enlightened at that point. If you can see that far, right? That far ahead or that far within, however you want to look at it. One of the things I really want to touch on is what's been important at this time. It's kind of one of the reasons why I got back to this. It's been a long time coming. I mean, I was away doing more, honestly. Everything that I talked about earlier this year, I wasn't just up here, selling dreams. I was applying that information, that same information I was sharing. I talked about in January, February, how gold was going to shoot up. I started buying gold and stuff like that. And these are investments, right? Financially, the stocks, right? I was telling people buy stocks in March, April, when everyone was panicking. I told people to buy stocks. Them stocks have triple, 4, 5, 10x since then, right? I had mentioned the importance of the planetary alignment. This again was in February or March, right? That's called syzygy. That was on my syzygy episode, and what that alignment meant and what events would occur on the earth, such as tsunamis, earthquakes, natural disasters of that sense. And unfortunately, those actually manifested, and it wasn't because I wanted them to manifest. It was just history tells us these are the things that happens. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it always rhymes. And again, these things are in scriptures, these things are in scientific studies and stuff like that. So it's really not hard to find. You just gotta open a book and take your time to read it. But all these things really happen, and one of the things that occurred last week was the supermoon. So it was known as the beaver moon. It was the strongest supermoon of the year. And I don't know about you all, but I've never, I try to be in alignment as much as I can with the full moons and and rituals and meditating during these times, supermoon, solar eclipses and stuff like that, right? You try to absorb that energy, right? You try to be in alignment with that energy and kind of see where that takes you, any downloads you get, right? That supermoon last week was different. It was just different. I never felt like nothing like that in my life. And I'm not just saying that. I literally I believe it was on the 4th, right? A week ago from today. And I think it was the 4th or the 5th, and I literally took a day off from work. Yeah, it was the 5th because I remember I took Wednesday off from work. My energy going up into that week, like the past few weeks I've been my energy's been heightened. It's like a natural adrenaline just rushing through me. But then, actually before that, I had an MRI schedule, and this is related. This is, it sounds off topic, but this is related. I had an MRI scheduled, and I've had 5-6 MRIs in the past, never no issues, right? And I had an MRI scheduled for my shoulder, and I couldn't complete the MRI. I only needed to be in the machine 25 minutes, and I literally was in there like less than, I was probably in there like 5 minutes, and I was like, this feels a little different. I was fasting at the time, so the lady was like, the energy from the MRI, it rattles your neurons, and it could be why you feel lightheaded, a little dizziness or whatnot. But just going into it, like my energy was so high that I don't know, I already felt weird going into it, but I already had it scheduled. So I was like, what, I waited a long time for this MRI, let me just go make it happen. Couldn't finish it, and it was interesting for me because, I sat there and I tried, and I was like, you know what, let's not, I'll reschedule another time. Because it was just something intuitive about it that I was like, my energy's just like on 100 right now. Like I feel like I drank, 10 Celsius before coming over here, you know what I'm saying? And that wasn't the case. So it was very interesting, and that was heading into the supermoon. So the supermoon, during that time, there was like a lot of restlessness, adrenaline, but also a lot of like synchronicities playing out, right? There was dreams were more real, right? They felt more real. I rarely remember dreams vividly and stuff like that. Maybe like, they say we dream hundreds of times during the night, and we might remember like a couple of them, right? But I was remembering these dreams very vividly, and they felt very real. It was very interesting, and deja vus started occurring, often during that period. Tests. When I talk about tests, I'm talking about people testing you, right? These could be personal relationships, family, close friends, or professional relationships, co-workers, peers, and stuff like that, right? Clients, whatever type of people you work with. But you got to be aware of these tests, right? Obviously, naturally, your reaction is normal, emotional most of the time. But then when you take a step back and kind of think things through, like logically, you sit there and realize like it's a test. It's all a test. This is an experience of life, and you can't really get worked up about things like that. So you gotta find important coping skills when things like that arise, and remain in alignment. If exercise helps, or reading, nature, meditating, silence, just going for a drive or something, music, art, whatever coping skill allows you to settle back down and think things on a logic level, then that's what we should be doing during these times. But I was getting a lot of downloads, and when I say downloads, people don't, I'm not sure if people are familiar with these with the term downloads, but it's just information that kind of just comes to you, right? And I'm of the belief that we are all from one source of consciousness. Everyone is connected to that consciousness, right? It's like the internet web, let's say, for example, right? The information is all out there. You just have to connect it and look for it, seek it, and you will find it. So I believe that we are all connected in that sense, right? But when I say downloads, it's like, things you may have been thinking about come faster, right? Answers come faster. And I'm one of these people that writes things down. So these things were coming to me and I was just writing them down, and it was just like synchronicities, right? Things that I've talked about in the past were just happening faster, right? I've talked about how this was an important year for Geminis. All year I've been talking about this, right? Excuse me. During this time, I was receiving downloads about like, whoa, the Gemini thing again is picking up again. And, I didn't understand why. I'm not on social media too much. I browse or whatnot. Just to see kind of like, I use social media for more informational than entertainment. We got to learn how to retrain our algorithms for positive information, for useful information versus negativity, toxicity, distractions, right? Sexual exploitation and stuff like that, right? These things are distracting us. The algorithm is built to distract us when we should be retraining it and have social media work for us, not against us, right? So during this time, the downloads kept coming in, and then I was checking like, why Gemini? And then when I opened social media, I seen, I was talking about Kendrick Lamar all year, and then I seen him, Major League Baseball blasted him because the LA Dodgers won. They beat Toronto, so it was like they made it a Kendrick versus Drake thing again, right? So that came up again. Kodak Black dropped a new album, right? And he was talking about it's time to be free. It's this is the time, the greatest time to be alive, right? And these are things that I've been saying for months at the beginning of this year, an entire year about this, right? I've actually been saying that statement is the greatest time to be alive for a couple years now. But out in an episode like this, I've said it before plenty of times, hashtags, all the time I mention it, and it was, some might see it as like, oh, it's crazy this happened. No. I expected it to happen, But when it does happen, it's like, it's an aha moment, an eye-opening reassurance moment, You can't help but smile internally and confirm like, okay. But it wasn't just that, I talked about Kanye West all year, the importance of him being a messenger. And at the same time, Kodak dropped his album. Kanye announced that he'll be dropping his album soon, right? Trump, I know, people have their own views about Mr. Trump, right? But he's a Gemini, and I was talking about, the importance of what he's doing, right? Whether you believe he's doing things wrong or not, I'm not here for that, right? I'm not choosing sides. What I'm saying is the importance of Geminis. Geminis are known as messengers, communicators, right? So whether the message is being delivered in a negative fashion, a positive fashion, however it's being delivered, it must be delivered because we are the messengers. I'm a Gemini. I am a messenger. I'm a great communicator. This is what I'm doing is I'm in alignment on my purpose, and I am communicating information that may benefit some others may just skip right over it. They don't understand, and it's okay. It's not meant for them to understand, right? Those who understand, those who know what I'm talking about, will appreciate this information, and I appreciate them for taking it in, maybe reflecting on it, right? Nothing I say on here is, I'm not telling people what to do. I'm not, demanding anything. I'm just sharing information. You do what you choose with that information. You have free will. That's one of the most important things that we have, humans have, that no other species has, is free will. We get to choose what we want to do. You get to choose what you want to do with that information. I just suggest you choose wisely. Reflect on these things and do your own research and come to your own conclusions and go from there. Another thing that happened too this year that I didn't touch on a lot, right? At all, at least in the beginning. I've been talking about The drones, the UFOs, the extraterrestrials, that all these things that have been putting out into the media, right? I was just like, they're putting things out there for us to get used to what's coming, right? And you can take that how you want, right? There's gonna be a lot of false narratives out there, but there's underlying truths to them as well, right? So one of the things that I really want to touch on is the interstellar object, what they are calling 3I Atlas, right? And people are not sure, they're saying it's a comet, it's, whatever, a meteor, but it's like the size of Manhattan, right? Imagine that, the size of Manhattan is huge. This is the third interstellar object just in the past couple years. I think since 2019 we started seeing these, and you gotta understand the importance of that. We're shifting. Things are opening up. Portals are opening up. We're talking about a portal today. When I talk about a portal, I'm not really physically, it's not like, you gotta think about it as above, so below, as within, so without, right? You're not just gonna walk outside your door and see a portal open up physically. In reality, it's a mental thing though, right? A portal opened up mentally, a shift is happening, right? You step into that portal or you avoid it, right? On the other side of that portal, on the other side of that opening, might be freedom, might be death. Who knows, right? You have to be in alignment with what's for you, so that when these things present themselves, you are ready to receive or reject, right? So 3I Atlas, third interstellar object we've seen across our universe in the past couple of years. And the thing is that it's an awakening. We're starting to see things more clear. These things more than likely have been in our airspaces for thousands, millions of years, but we just weren't conscious enough. We were in a sleep state. We weren't paying attention to that. We were distracted. The distractions are fading away. We're starting to see it. Hollywood. My first episode was about Hollywood and the destruction of Hollywood. When's the last time you went to a movie theater? When's the last time you talked about this great movie that just came out? I don't even recall. When's the last time you seen an actor like doing something? I don't even recall. I'm trying to think of it while I'm talking here, and I'm like, I really don't even recall any of that. It's just interesting how that just fell off, right? Music isn't the same anymore, right? Little by little, you're fading away from music. You're getting tired of music quicker than ever. An album drops on a Friday, by Monday you're like, I need some new music. It's just different. We talked about that. We talked about politics, right? How things are ending. Trump is bringing chaos to all parties involved. Doesn't matter what party, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, independent, everybody's catching strays, and that is bringing down the political system. I promise you. Religion is being questioned, right? Religion is being questioned, especially when things like this, like 3I Atlas, you're talking about like an interstellar object, right? Religions are coming into question. You see people fighting on the internet about Christians and Muslims and this and that and scriptures and going viral, right? And it's like, it's tainting. Everything's being tainted. Sports, right? You're seeing a lot of things come to the light in sports. I mean, at the beginning of the year, they talked about Shohei Ohtani gambling, right? They swept that under the rug. That boy won a World Series. They ain't talk about that all year, right? But then you see other baseball players. Emmanuel Clase from the Guardians last week got caught up in a gambling scandal. Suspended out of here. The NBA, Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones. These are important figures in the NBA, right? Some people may not know. These are important. Like Chauncey Billups is a Hall of Famer. He ruined his legacy, honestly. Got caught up in a scandal. NFL, they're questioning Roger Goodell. They're questioning Adam Silver of the NBA. They're questioning UFC. You know, one of the fighters just got suspended or kicked out of the UFC for supposedly rigging a fight, right? Sports is out of here. You know what I'm saying? All entertainment. We're not in Rome no more. You know, Rome was built, the Colosseums were built for entertainment. Well, guess what? Stadiums, football stadiums, baseball stadiums, basketball arenas, UFC rings, all these things are, it's just symbolically like Rome, the Colosseums, entertainment, distractions. And we are gravitating actually away from that, not towards it anymore. So this is very important, you know. And when you talk about 3i Atlas and like the importance or the significance of these things, like just think about it. This thing was spotted on July 11th, right? Midsummer, July, right before I stopped doing the episode. I think my last episode was like in May, something like that, right? July 11th. Now, you know why that's important? The first couple of weeks of July are known as, quote unquote, the dog days. Dog days of the summer, right? It's the hottest time of the summer. Temperatures rise over 100 in several areas. Dog days, right? Now, what the dog days really is referring to is the star system, Sirius B, right? And Sirius B is known as the dog star. The dog star. Look it up. Sirius B is known as the dog star, right? And when Sirius B is closest to Earth is in the first couple weeks of July every year. That's why it's known as the dog days. That's why the energy is higher. It's hotter on the planet, right? Energies arise. You know, they don't want us looking in the sky at that time. They don't want us looking at Sirius, trying to absorb that energy. Why do you think they have all the fireworks going on, right, throughout the entire month of July? It's to block the skyways, you know what I'm saying, so that we don't see these things. We don't see the brightness of Sirius and question it, and they don't allow curiosity to kick in, right? Because they know once we get curious and we start following through on that curiosity, we're gonna get some answers, right? And they don't want that. They don't want that. So that's important, and keep that in mind, because this is every year. You know, the Sirius dog star, the dog days in the middle of the summer, that's every year. And that's actually a time to, you know, fall back, meditate, absorb that energy, and move in alignment, just like today. You know what I'm saying? That is another portal opening, metaphorically speaking, right? You know, today on the news, we seen that solar flares were the most powerful today, more than any other day in 2025, right? And that's interesting because 3i Atlas has been, you know, out there traveling in the cosmos for the past couple months, and people are, you know, scientists are trying to analyze it and observe it and see what's going on, right? And they assume it's a comet, right? But a lot of scientists, including Avi Loeb, which he's been talking about this thing potentially not being a comet, potentially being a intelligent craft, let's just say that, right? His thing was, you know, if it's gonna move away from our view here on Earth, right? It's gonna get closer to the sun. And he was like, you know, if anything changes from when it comes around the sun back around to our view, if anything changes, it kind of confirms that this is an intelligent craft and not a comet, right? And what we realized is that when it did spin the block and it came back into view, guess what? This thing was supposedly 13% lighter. It shed some mass. It was emitting green energy, right? And they didn't understand why, right? This is just days ago. Well, guess what? Once it passed the sun, guess what happened? Solar flares. The most powerful solar flares to date in 2025, right? And what do solar flares do? Well, solar flares project rapid magnetic reconnection on the sun, right? They release radiation across the spectrum, right? So they're called X-class flares, and they can trigger blackouts on Earth. They can disrupt GPS accuracy, internet connection, CMEs, drive geomagnetic storms that stress power grids and pipelines. So that's interesting because guess what? At work today, I had issues with my internet all day. Now, I never have issues with my internet at work. We have several servers. It's never a problem. And I had to jump off a Zoom call today because it just wasn't functioning correctly. Does that have anything to do with it? I don't know. That's just an observation, right? But some of these things that are important are CMEs, right? Geomagnetic storms that can stress power grids and cause blackouts and disrupt GPSs and connections, internet connections. I mean, the blackout part of it, guess what? That's coming. That is coming. And this is not fear mongering. This is something that's been in the works for a long time. And just how I mentioned on my syzygy episode that the planetary alignment will cause, vibration on the earth, leading to like tsunamis and earthquakes, and it actually happened. Well, guess what? Solar flares cause geomagnetic storms and can enhance the potential for grid failure, which will lead to blackouts, right? No internet, complete blackout. There are studies, there are books, scriptures. I should have pulled up an actual source that mention 10 days of blackout on Earth. That's spicy because people can't handle that. People can't handle that. People can't handle being disconnected from the internet. People can't handle being digitally disconnected. And they're going to learn today, This is going to be an interesting period. It might result in a lockdown, a military event, a martial law event. Like we're already seeing and hearing the rumblings about Trump setting up military forces in major cities. He says they're for immigrants and stuff like that and violence or whatever, but they're in a lot of major cities, New York, LA, Chicago, Baltimore, places like that. And it's like, that's very interesting, right? It's a precursor to what's coming. But again, this isn't fear mongering. I'm just paying attention. I'm being observant. I'm being aware. This is a time to tap into your awareness, heighten your awareness as much as you can, because these things are happening right in front of us, right before our eyes. If you're not paying attention, it's okay. You can keep watching, Kai Cenat on TV and reality shows and soap operas. I don't know, keep doing you. And we're going to keep doing us. At this time, with the flares externally, internally, if you're feeling like noisy, right, the planet is too, right? As above, so below, as within, so without. The planet, the ionosphere density changes in the planet, right? So polar routes are rerouted, auroras surge, right? This is why we've been seeing a lot of like the northern lights, which were only usually in one part of the world. We're seeing them like across everywhere now. I don't know how many times they mention like the northern lights will be visible tonight over here in LA or over here on the East Coast. Probably seen that 4 or 5 times this year, which is, abnormal to say the least. But this is also why people are feeling more adrenaline, like I talked about earlier, or on the other side of the spectrum, more fatigued, right, during these solar activities. I talk about polarity. One of the 7 principles in the Kabbalion, right, the Hermetic principles is polarity, right? So if we're talking about something on the same scale. On one end is high adrenaline, on the other end is high fatigue, right? So you can be experiencing a little bit of both. Maybe one side of the scale tips the other. I mentioned earlier how I was feeling a lot of adrenaline during the supermoon, but the past maybe 2 or 3 days, I've been feeling a little bit fatigued. And I'm not sure, I work in human services, I work with people all day. I am in the social work field, and I tap into that therapist clinical mode, and that's at work. And then you come outside of work and you still got that hat on, and I try to connect and be empathetic and compassionate with my friends and family, right? And all this energy can drain you. You can you can feel compassion fatigue. So that plays a part into it for me specifically, right? But when it is over the top and it's sudden and it's short periods like this, I think outside of the box, and things like we're talking about, like the solar flares and all of that, may play a factor into that, because compassion fatigue would be something that will kind of drag out versus just it being a brief day or two. So notice how you feel today internally. The landscape around us is busy, it's loud, but the inner signal is your guide, your intuition. Follow your intuition. It'll never lead you wrong. Emotions, right? Emotions are energy in motion, and all emotions stem from gut sensations. So I just, I'm reading a book called Help for the Helper. It's by Miss Babbitt Rothschild, I believe. And it talks about dealing with emotions, psychotherapy, especially in human services for therapists, psychologists, and social workers and stuff like that, right? And that's one of the most important things she touches on is like, you got to be aware of your emotions. But the emotions all come from your gut instincts, right? Your gut sensations. Your gut is a brain, right? It is a natural brain. It's your first brain. When you get that gut feeling, then your actual brain kicks in and it's like, okay, this is why I'm feeling like this. But the gut feeling is what comes first, right? But in order to receive these sensations, these informations, these downloads in a timely manner, is to be good to your gut, right? Clear your gut, detox, fasting, holistic wellness. These are the things that are going to cleanse you and bring clarity and awareness, enlightenment, upgrade, activation, awakening, whatever you want to call it. It starts in the gut. And that's important, right? Because if you feel yourself being too emotional, you might want to check your gut. Because all emotions are contagious, whether good or bad. But you have to decipher between emotions and logic, right? So if you're reactive and emotions kick in, that's okay. But with a clear gut, with clarity, clear awareness, mindfulness, you can take a step back, be an observer, and look at things from two different perspectives. You can look at it from an emotional perspective and then a logical perspective, and kind of see where you land, somewhere in the middle. Everything's balanced. As a Gemini, I'm very open-minded. I like to look at things from all perspectives and just remain open-minded. That also can lead to indecisiveness, right? I'm undecided of what to choose, right? But just seeing things from an outside view, a panoramic perspective is what I like to call it. It allows you to make more conscious, mindful decisions that usually work out in your favor. Now, one of the things that are going to be happening from this time forward, from today forward, things are going to be happening with you, with us humans, internally. Abilities and gifts will be unlocked. This is intuition, is going to be heightened. Creativity will be heightened. Strength, if you go to the gym, your strength, you're going to become more powerful. Strength wise, you're going to be more motivated, right? The dreams are going to feel realer, right? They're going to feel more like visions. You'll be daydreaming more, right? A lot of deja vu happening. You'll also be healing internally, externally, faster than you did before, and an example of this is like, I'm not talking about like you got an open wound on your arm and it's like Wolverine, you're healed in 30 seconds. No, I'm talking about healing internally, right? If let's say for an example, a couple years ago you went through a breakup and it took you 2-3 years to get through that breakup, right? Today you can experience a breakup and maybe it'll only take you 2 or 3 months to get through with it, right? The healing process has sped up, right? That's just an example. Creativity, you're gonna tap into, whether it's writing, journaling, art, music, everything is gonna turn up a notch. And we gotta be aware of that, we gotta be aware of those gifts and abilities. And if you're not feeling it, just try it. Just take some time to do something you love. Tap into your skills. See where that leads you. New people are gonna enter your life at this time. You gotta pay attention to who shows up at this time. There's gonna be unexpected connections, unforced relationships will occur. These people are gonna challenge you to continue your path of enlightenment. Because old relations, they're gonna deteriorate in order for these new energies to take their place. Whatever you release at this time right now is gonna be replaced with something in your favor tenfold, right? So that person that didn't value you, that didn't appreciate you, you gotta let go, release, find closure in that within yourself. And someone new will enter your life and appreciate you more than ever, right? Be grateful for you, value you. Where you once felt like a liability to someone, the next person you're with is gonna see you as an asset, an invaluable asset, a need, a necessity. They're gonna cherish that. You gotta be open to that, right? These relationships, you gotta put yourself in these rooms. Network, right? Your network is your net worth, right? So the people you surround yourself with, that is what's gonna bring value to you. If you surround yourself with negativity, toxicity, distractions, well, guess what? Your value deteriorates, diminishes. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. Honestly, there's a saying that says if you surround yourself around 9 broke people, you're bound to become the 10th broke person, right? But vice versa, if you surround yourself with 9 wealthy, rich people, you're bound to become the 10th. Choose your cohort wisely at this time. Pay attention to who shows up. Nothing ever is a coincidence. Everything is for a reason. You have to not only pay attention to that, go with your gut, with your intuition. It'll never lead you wrong. Follow through on those relationships. Just try invest in those relationships. If you have to invest to get in certain rooms, right, to be seen, to be valued, to be heard, to make connections, guess what? This is the time to do it. If there is, whatever field you're in, right? If you're a small business and there's an opportunity for a pop-up shop in your community, and it's like, you got to make $100 reservation for this pop-up shop, this is the time to do it. Invest in yourself. It doesn't matter if you go to this pop-up shop and you don't sell a dime. You don't sell anything that you brought. No, none of your products move, anything like that, right? That is not a loss. That is not a failure, right? The people you meet there might lead you to a record number of sales for your products, for your business. right? If you meet the right people there, then everything is worth it, right? Conversations are worth it, right? Memories are worth it. Experiences are worth it. Stop paying attention to dollar amounts and dollar signs and stuff like that, man. You gotta invest yourself. This is the time. This is the greatest time to be alive. You know, if you don't believe in yourself, who else is gonna believe in you? You know, this is the time to save yourself. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save us. This is the time for us to save ourselves. You gotta tap into your true purpose, right? Your inner awareness, and take a stand today and say, you know what? It's time. It's time for change. It's time for progress, growth. It's time to build. It's time for unity. You know, it's time for action. You gotta step into action, frontline. You know, because, you know, those opportunities are gonna present themselves. You gotta be ready. You know, luck doesn't just happen. Luck is the intersection between opportunity and preparation, right? So you have to be prepared for what's coming, so that when the opportunity presents itself, you got to jump into action. And that's what they call luck. Nothing is luck. There's no such thing as luck. You know what I'm saying? If somebody hits a game-winning shot in a basketball game and they're like, oh my God, they're so lucky they hit it from half court with their eyes closed. Man, listen, you know how many times they practiced that in their backyard as a kid? In open gym with their friends? And then as adults? Nothing is luck. You know what I'm saying? Everything happens for a reason. Happens just as it's supposed to happen, you know? You know, we got to think about November. When we think about November, we think about harvest season. You know, and that's a reality, right? For like farmers and croppers and stuff like that, right? But metaphorically speaking, you have to review what you've grown, right? What have you grown this year? Have you grown new habits? Are they good habits? Are they bad habits, right? Have you progressed health-wise, or has your health declined, right? Have you built community? Have you alienated yourself from community? Have you built wealth, or has your wealth diminished, right? Right now is the time to plant seeds consciously, plant seeds of growth, preparation for the next cycle, for what's coming in 2026. Very important year. It's a 1 year, and one reflects new beginnings. Everything is going to change. I promise you. Everything is going to change in divine order. It has to. 2025, my first episode, chaos out of order. This whole year, all we seen was chaos, right? So what comes next? Order. Unfortunately, order is uncomfortable. Order is going to be extremely uncomfortable for those people who are not ready for it. Those who are ready are going to seize the moment, and they're going to take off. And it's up to you to either jump on board or jump ship and get left behind. Simple as that. You know, when we talk about planting seeds, what does that really mean? You got to set intentions, you know, that align with your purpose. You got to take small, consistent actions now that are going to manifest later, right? So you got to stack up small wins. I talk about this all the time with my clients. You got to stack small wins. When people are struggling, when people are rock bottom, the only thing left, the only way to go from rock bottom is up, right? But you got to stack small wins. You know, it's like it's an uphill battle, metaphorically and you know, realistically speaking, it's an uphill battle, right? How are you going to get uphill? You got to take small steps, baby steps to get there. You can't just, you know, run up a hill, slip and fall right back down, hit rock bottom again, right? You got to move methodically, take intentional steps forward, right? Plan ahead. You know, you got to visualize the person you want to become in the near future, you got to visualize that right now, today, in order to manifest that. We got to understand that, alignment isn't just about feeling good, right? It's consistent action matched with the inner direction that you are feeling, right? Applying the knowledge, executing, right? 9 year, it's a year of completion, executing. This is something that I wrote on my vision board at the beginning of the year, first week of the year. 9 year completion. I wrote down, I think, 6 things that I wanted to hone in on for the year, and one of those things, some of those things were focus, awareness, discipline, execution, right? Finish the job. You know how many times, I work 2 jobs right now. I go to school, no time, rarely any time for fun, right? Fun for me is learning, is being at peace, being in quiet, meditating, doing things I love. As corny, as nerdy as it sounds, that's fun to me. That's the real definition of fun, because I'm doing what I love to do, right? So for me, execution was a big thing. Discipline, awareness, focus. Obviously, you kind of stay away from that at times. As long as you come back to it, you'll be good. Because each time you drift away from these things, you drift away for less and less time, right? If I become undisciplined for a month throughout the year and then get right back to it for a couple more months and then undisciplined again, the next time will probably be like 2 weeks instead of a month, right? Then I get right back on track, and then if I fall off again, maybe I fall off for a week and a half, right? So each time I drift away from my purpose, it'll be less and less time because my awareness is heightened. And I'm more aware of what's taking place. We gotta understand, like, this is the time to be free. Kodak Black said it in his new song, it's a time to be free, greatest time to be alive. We're cycle breakers. Are you? Are you a cycle breaker? Are you intentionally working towards breaking generational curses, right? If your family has a generational cycle of trauma, of negativity, of destruction, of division, right? Of lack of focus, this is your time to break that. You gotta nip it in the butt right now. You gotta step outside the box, right? If you are seeing trends in your family, you have to be aware of trends in your family and try to break those trends. A lot of the people in my field become, I got into human services because I went through these things and I have lived experience, right? It makes it easy for me to relate to my clients. But a lot of the people I work with got into the field, right? Because they want to be cycle breakers, because they seen their they didn't go through it themselves, right? There's a thing such as primary trauma. Primary trauma is when you experience something, when you experience trauma, violence, assault, stuff like that, right? And then there's secondary trauma, where you were a witness to these things, right? And it still hurts you, it still pains you. You feel it just like you actually went through these things, right? So a lot of people that jump into this field come into it based off of secondary trauma. Like, I watch my, this is an example of people, not my family, but they'll say, like, I watch my family be destructive and toxic relationships, and maybe alcoholics and people with addictions and stuff like that, right? Mental health challenges and stuff like that, right? They watch that and now they want to be cycle breakers, so they get into the field of psychology, of social work, or whatever, to help others going through that, cycle breakers. That's what they are. Whether it's intentional, whether they are aware, right, that they're cycle breakers or not. Every chance I get on panel discussions, on conferences, networking meetings, anything, this is the exact same way I come and talk to, the masses here on this platform is the same way I talk to my friends, my family, co-workers, clients, peers. There's no change in me. You know what I'm saying? It's you have to remain authentic, right? You can only change for the better, grow, develop, right? But you have to remain authentic to yourself. The Audacity show, you have to have the audacity to remain authentic in a time where inauthentic is the new norm. Everything you see on social media, on the news, whatever, it's a facade. It's not real. People act rich. People act confident. People choose sides and stuff like that, man. It's all a facade. You have to remain true to yourself. Stay in alignment with yourself and what you believe in. You can either, step into this portal and attract alignment, or you can remain in distraction. You got to understand that attract means to be on track, right? On track. Distract means to be off track. So when you want to attract alignment, you want to remain on track with your purpose, with your mission in life, right? And you want to avoid distractions, because those are going to lead you off track from your mission, from your purpose. So I want y'all to think about that. And things are going to change. Beliefs will continue to change. You're going to question everything. We're on the brink of freedom. Whatever that looks like to you is coming. Freedom is coming. I promise you. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. Right? It's going to be hard. It's going to be real hard. It's going to be difficult to accept it. But guess what? It's necessary. Freedom is coming. And I challenge people to start being more mindful and more intentional. Become cycle breakers, right? Fight for your freedom. Advocate for others' freedom, right? Question any beliefs that have been indoctrinated in you, right? If you grew up in a family who, followed a specific religion your whole life, and you kind of feel maybe like the black sheep, you don't understand why they're following this, well, guess what? Look into it. Follow your curiosity and figure out whether that's something that aligns with what you want to do in life or not, or that's something that's aligned with your family. Make that decision sooner than later. And one thing I really do want to challenge everyone is to live a sober life. I'm in that field of human services. Again, I'm in the field of recovery. People are recovering from everything. Trauma, homelessness, addictions and stuff like that, right? Mental health challenges, PTSD, right? Experiences, the neighborhoods. I challenge y'all to step into recovery. For yourselves, for your family, for your others. I challenge y'all to put down the drinks, put down the smokes, put down the vapes, the marijuana, whatever else is your substance of choice. I challenge you to put that down. Just try it for a day, then try it for a week, then try it for a month and see how you feel. And be honest with yourself, nobody's, if people are going to judge you or whatever, listen, man, it's all good. You know how many times I have to find a new circle of peers, of friends. Why? Because most of the people in my circle that I grew up with, came up with, don't understand me anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are not in alignment anymore. You know, if you are reaching out to me for negativity, for toxicity, for gossip, I'm not the one. That phone don't even ring no more. I literally keep my phone on silent, D&D, all the time. You know what I'm saying? The only calls that are allowed to go through are, you know, my immediate family, my mother, my brother, my sister, my right-hand man, you know, my sister-in-law, stuff like that, right? Grandma, uncle. Anything else, man, you going straight to silent mode, voicemail. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? If it's really important, text me. Leave a voicemail, email. I don't care. I'm going to get back to you. You know what I'm saying? I promise you. But I need to protect my energy. And I want y'all to protect your energy. You know? And I challenge everybody to just try to live a sober life. You don't understand the power, you know, in people that I see every day who are fighting. They've been stuck in the rut for years, their entire life, and they're fighting, digging, clawing their way out of it, and I'm seeing it, right? You know, I'm seeing it. And if they can do it, I promise you, you can do it, you know? But you're choosing to live that life. Again, we get back to free will. Humans have the free will to make the decisions. You have to live with those decisions in your life. Your family, your kids, your siblings have to live with that, right? Your peers, you know, you aren't the only one suffering. You're putting them through suffering as well. They are suffering with you. And I had to learn that the hard way, you know what I'm saying? I was incarcerated half my life. The majority of my life, honestly, right? In and out of incarceration. And guess what? At times, I chose to be incarcerated. That sounds crazy, but at times, I knew myself. I was aware enough to be like, I need a break. I deserve this, right? But what I didn't understand was that me making those decisions, you know, those were consequences that were falling back on my loved ones, you know, and they were suffering with me, right? So I had to change. You know, at first I said, no, I got to change for them. I got to change for my mom, for my loved ones, those who care. But then I realized, no. I got to change for me. You know, once I changed for me, I was able to present a better version of myself that would trickle down to everyone around me. And what once started as a phase became the norm, became contagious. You know, that's hard right there. You know what I'm saying? What was once a phase, you know, became the norm for me. And then it became contagious to everyone around me. And an example of that is, you know, that's a gem. I wasn't even planning that. That's a gem. You know what I'm saying? That's a freestyle off the top of the dome. That's a bar. When I came, you know, the first time I took accountability for my actions was in 2015. 2015, right? Picked up a case. First time I was like, I deserve to sit down. You know, I was ducking and dodging the system for years, and I was getting away with things that I probably shouldn't have. This time I was like, you know what? I don't even care. Give me whatever you're offering. I'll take it right now. And I did. I owned up to my actions, and that's when things changed for me. Boom. At the drop of a dime, accountability led to awareness, enlightenment, clarity, right? So when I was released from that particular sentence, right, I came out different. I came out talking different. Physically, I was in the best shape of my life. Spiritually, I was into Islam at the time, right? I was very disciplined. It was a whole different me. People around me didn't understand it. That's when I started my veganism journey, right? Like I stopped eating pork, I stopped eating red meat all in general, right? And when I first came out, people were like, well, this is just a phase. He's studying Islam because that's what they do in jail. They don't eat pork and stuff like that, obviously, in Islamic culture. So it's just a phase, right? But what was once a phase went from a month to 6 months to a year to, accelerating that. I went from no pork to no red meat to no chicken, no eggs, nothing. No animal products. Being in the culture where we from, Spanish culture, whatever, crazy. They said, oh, he done lost his mind. He came out a vegan Muslim. He came out a vegan Muslim. This is crazy. You know what I'm saying? But guess what? Then people started asking me, why? Why did I make that decision? What led me to that decision? Then they seen I was doing Ramadan. Not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, not 4 years in a row. It was an annual thing. Then I had friends that laughed at me in the beginning. 4 or 5 years later down the road, ask if they could join in the observance of Ramadan with me. You know what I'm saying? Family members started eating healthier. Those things are contagious. People around me started eating more fruits, interested in more holistic wellness, interested in meditation. How did you start meditation? Can you guide me? Can you help? Refer some books to me, some videos, right? People stopped drinking regular milk. Now they want almond milk or coconut milk or anything dairy free, right? So that's what I mean when a phase turned into normalcy and then to a positive contagion, where that energy, right, that clarity, the light that was shining through me when I separated myself from distractions, from evil, negativity, and poison. That light was shining through me, and it attracted people. They gravitated for me. They wanted more information. And this is not the ego talking. This is real life. Anybody that has experienced this is going to tell you a similar story. And you never know how many people you can affect. It could be one person that gravitates to 5 people, 10 people, 100 people. The whole room. A small match lights up a dark room. Be that match. Be that lighter in the room that lights up the room. You know what I'm saying? I challenge y'all, man. Put down the drinks. Put down the smokes. You don't need none of that. You don't need nothing outside of yourself. You don't need nothing external to make you feel alive, to make you feel happy, right? Everyone's just masking their emotions, their traumas. They don't want to face reality. They don't want to face their fears. In addiction counseling, right? If you're talking about like AA, Alcohol Anonymous and stuff like that, there's a step 4. There's 12 steps. Step 4 is to face your fears. That is the number 1 step people get stuck on. I done seen people complete steps 1, 2, 3. When it comes to 4, they disappear. I won't see these people for months. They don't want to face those fears. But when they hit rock bottom again and they have no other choice but to face the fears, they come back. And it's still hard, so hard for them. And I understand it, you know what I'm saying? But these are things that you got to do. You got to tap in, right? You got to do the work, shadow work. Find who you truly are. Whatever tools help you, gain that knowledge, gain that insight about yourself. It could be astrology, it could be numerology, it could be religion, it could be whatever, intuitively, whatever floats your boat, right? Tap into that. Find out who you truly are, right? As much research you do on celebrities, false idols, whatever time you spent watching the sports channel, the soap operas, the movies, if you commit even half of that time to self-discovery and finding out who you truly are, there's no going back. There's no going back. Everything from there will deteriorate on its own. But it starts with a decision to change, a decision to grow, a decision to step outside of what you know. Put down the drinks, put down the substances, right? Pick up the books. Pick up the plants, herbs, right? The essential oils, right? That's what you really got to tap into. And you know, people are going to be corny and sit up here like, oh, you know, marijuana's a plant. Listen, man, stop it. You got to be real with yourself. You know, our ancestors used these plants as remedies. They didn't smoke them. You know, tobacco, they didn't put all these chemicals in them and whatnot. No. When you get natural tobacco, natural cannabis, and you can make teas and herbs and remedies and topical stuff that you can, you know, medically apply and stuff and heal, that's different. That's not what we in right now. That's not what we're doing with these things. You don't even know what you're smoking. You don't even know what you are intaking, your substance. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what you're drinking. Just going to a liquor store, you like, let me get this, Man, listen, poison. I done seen people, man, I don't even want to talk about how many people I done seen leave us from these addictions and these decisions they make. They just get stuck. Can't let go. This is the opportunity for you to let go. Be a cycle breaker for you and yours. I promise you, life is never going to be the same in the next coming years. And, you know, I'm trying to step front line. Leadership, guidance, purpose. I'm ready for whatever. Whatever y'all want to do. If it's on the path to progression, to unity, to freedom, man, sign me up. I'm there, front line, infantry. You know what I'm saying? You know, I want to leave this off with some closing suggestions. You know, we talked about the 1111 portal, and everything we just talked about today has to do with that, because it's about the energy. It's not about the significance of specifically just the numbers and stuff like that. No. It's the energy that these numbers hold, these dates hold, this time and moment right now. There is no future. There is no past. There's only the present. You know, we get stuck on stuff like this. You know, people are, conspiracy theories say like, people be time traveling. The Simpsons, they're a time traveler. No, listen, you watching this right now, time travel every day. If you are stuck on a relationship from the past, you are a time traveler. If you are anxious and worried about the future, you are a time traveler. Stick to the now. Stick to this moment right now. The present. The present is a gift. That's why they call it the present. Honor that, right? Be grateful for that gift. You know, couple suggestions for today. Meditate. As I'm talking right now, I got military time, so it's 22:22. So it's 10:22 right now, but in military time that's 22:22. You know, I'm always in alignment. But I want y'all to meditate. Meditate during 11:11 p.m. tonight. If you're watching this tomorrow morning, meditate during 11:11 a.m. tomorrow or 11:11 p.m. tomorrow. Obviously, the energy is more potent and powerful if you can catch this episode tonight. And complete these steps, right? But if not, it's always available. You just gotta envision what you really want to do. Meditate. Ask yourself, what energy am I carrying that I must release, let go of? Find closure within yourself, within relationships. Forgive yourself first. That's one of the hardest things to do. That's the last thing people do, including myself. I've done many exercises during shadow work where it was just so hard to forgive myself for all the things I've done. And then, I sit back and think like, man, listen, it's the greatest time to be alive. I've been a beacon of light all my life. I just made, some questionable decisions that led me down the wrong path. But my intention, my heart was always pure. It was always in the right place. I never had no malintention. And I'm okay with everything that's played out. This journey has been amazing. This experience has been amazing, I can't complain about nothing. You know what I'm saying? So ask yourself, what am I carrying? Release that, right? And then ask yourself, what am I ready to embody? What am I ready to receive? Envision yourself. Envision who you want to be in the future. And when I say the future, who you want to be tomorrow? Who do you want to be in a month, in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of our time. Shout out Warren Buffett, R.I.P. Charlie Munger, his right-hand man. Warren Buffett's like 100 years old, man. And he's still, banking, stacking bread, billionaire, right? And he recently retired. And one of the final notes that he released to his followers, I actually read it. Man, I can't even make this up. I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. He had mentioned how we have to move with kindness. We have to treat everyone with equity, right? And you have to live your life as if, who you want to become. So he shared a story where, this is just like an example story that he shared, that there was a man that his brother passed away. And then when he went up there to read his brother's eulogy, he was horrified because the eulogy was actually talking about him. He was reading the wrong eulogy. They wrote a eulogy about him instead of his brother that passed away. So he decided that he realized how, not necessarily bad, but how he could have been better. And then from that day forward, he became better. He strived to be better. Because in the back of his mind, he just kept thinking, this is what I want my eulogy to be. I want people to know me as a great person, a great human, a kind human of service to others. I promise you, when you start tapping into yourself, the answer is always to be of service to others. No matter what you choose in life. If if your whole purpose is, a mom, guess what? You're being a service to your children. If your whole purpose is like to be a teacher, you're being a service to your students. If your purpose, your mission is to be in a medical field, doctor, nurse, your purpose is to be of service to those patients, right? When you unlock your inner awareness and tap in, find balance between your outer self and your inner self, it always leads to something outside of you. Be of service to the people around you. They need it more than you. I promise you. And lastly, if you're a journaler, write down some things. You love journaling. Write down 11 things that you're grateful for. And sit with that. Sit with that for a moment. Be grateful for that. And if you could, revisit those 11 things on a daily or weekly basis for the rest of the year. There's only 2 months left, right? A month and a half. Tap in. This is the greatest time to be alive. You gotta lock in. I'm glad I was here today. Stepped into that portal, that gateway, metaphorically speaking. We in a interesting time. Timelines are intertwining, are mixing, right? We're moving into what some call a futuristic landscape, right? Things are gonna be changing fast, accelerated. You gotta be ready for them, But when things are moving fast, guess what? You gotta slow down. When things are accelerating and moving fast, you must slow down internally so you can see clearly. And I hope some of my messages bring clarity to you and yours. Share this video with your loved ones. Share this video with anyone that can use this information. And just know that, I love you all. I'm here to be of service to anyone and everyone. I appreciate those who reached out to me and been asking me, when you drop in another episode, you motivate me. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. You're one of the 11 things I'll write down today that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for free will, opportunity, this platform, enlightenment, clarity. Greatest time to be alive. I'm going to leave y'all with that until the next episode and the transmission.